Okay, so we'll start lying down. So come to a comfortable position on your back, whatever that is for you right now, whether that's with knees bent and soles of the feet on the mat or legs out long. Take your time to settle, having an awareness of the contact between the back body and the mat and the ground. And once your body is settled, then bring your attention to your breath. Observing the breath as it comes in, as it goes out in its natural rhythm. Whenever you notice that you're no longer observing the breath, that the mind has been distracted away from the breath, use that noticing as an opportunity to guide your mind's attention back to the breath. If you want to set an intention for your practice today, take a moment to do that now. Now, if you haven't already, then bend your knees and bring soles of the feet to the mat. So have your feet and your knees about hip width apart. Arms resting alongside the body in whatever way feels comfortable. Next time you exhale, draw your navel in towards your spine. And maintain that action now of navel towards spine. Let the breath continue in its natural rhythm, but maintain the action of navel towards spine. So with navel drawing towards spine, perhaps you can notice a feeling of the lower back drawing into the mat a little more. Perhaps even that you might notice a feeling of the tailbone lengthening away from you a little more. So as if you're lengthening the lower part of the spine. Maintain your awareness there, and also have an awareness of the connection between your feet and the mat. So not doing anything extra with the feet, not pressing the feet any more firmly into the mat, but just be aware of the connection, the natural press of the feet into the mat here, also supporting you. So the drawing of navel towards spine, allowing you to access greater support by virtue of the lower back drawing into the mat, and also feet pressing into the mat, drawing stability, support from the ground. Next time you inhale, release the action of navel towards spine. And as you've done that, perhaps you've noticed some movement of the lower back away from the mat. Or you might experience that as a movement of the pelvis a tilting of the pelvis as you return to a more neutral position. So in a moment, we're going to take that action again of navel drawing towards spine. So don't do it yet, but when you do it again, see if you can have your awareness around the pelvis, around the pelvic area. So the action will be navel towards spine as before, but notice any feelings of movement or shift in the pelvis. So on your next exhale now, draw navel towards spine. Then maintain it for a few breaths here. And see if you can notice as the pelvis shifted, is there a feeling of the pelvis having tilted, and exactly how that feels will depend on different bodies. Maybe it feels like the pelvis is tilted back a little, maybe forward, but just see what it feels like for you. Overall, can you or do you feel like there is a greater sense of containment around the pelvic, abdominal and lower back area with navel drawing towards spine? Next time you inhale, release the action. So let this whole area come back to a neutral position. And now we're going to repeat that action a few times with the breath. So don't start yet, but when you do it, again, see if you can notice what your experience is of the lower back, of the tailbone lengthening and of the pelvis, perhaps tilting as you take these actions with the breath. So on your next exhale, draw navel towards spine. As you inhale, release that action. Exhale, draw navel towards spine. Inhale, release, and continue for a few more rounds. And notice as you do this, are you interpreting that action as drawing navel towards spine as fully and completely as you can? And if that doesn't feel good, don't do it. There's no requirement here to kind of make the sort of maximum movement of navel towards spine. You might be working quite subtly here. It might be a really gentle drawing of navel towards spine, and you're noticing the subtleties of the experience around the pelvis, the lower back, the tailbone as you do that. And you could play around with different kind of levels of engagement of navel towards spine. Okay, and then let that go. So just come back to a neutral position for a moment. Okay, and then on your next exhale, draw navel towards spine once more. So lower back drawing into the mat, maybe a feeling of tailbone lengthening away, perhaps an awareness of the pelvis tilted here. So overall, there's a feeling perhaps of greater stability and containment around the whole area of the pelvis, abdomen, lower back. Maintain that action. Keep arms resting alongside the body. And on your next inhale, pick your feet up off the mat and draw the knees in towards you, but only so far until the knees are directly above the hips. So you're taking a movement as if you were going to let the knees draw in towards the chest, but they stop when they're above the hips. The lower legs, the shins, calves, feet can be completely relaxed here. Check in with that action of navel towards spine. Maybe see if there's any scope to engage further or to re-engage that action of navel towards spine. Let the breath continue in its natural rhythm. Keep the action of navel towards spine, and on your next exhale, draw the soles of the feet back down to the mat. Release the action of navel towards spine. So if when you took that movement of picking the feet up and bringing the knees above the hips, if that didn't feel good on the lower back, so if it felt like there was pain or discomfort in the lower back, then take some support underneath the lower back. I mean, if it felt like the lower back was working, you know, and that felt a bit tough, no problem. But if it didn't feel right, if there was pain or discomfort there, then take support. So you could do that either by perhaps exploring taking a folded blanket. You wouldn't need much height underneath the lower back, or you could slide the hands underneath the lower back, palms facing down. And then you can make a kind of triangle with your thumbs and forefingers that are then resting against the sacrum here. So I'm kind of showing you what that might look like here. The other thing that you could do, particularly if the lower back doesn't feel comfortable, where the toughest bit is bringing the feet back down to the mat, if you've got some blocks that you could place to bring your feet back onto, so the feet aren't having to come all the way back down to the mat, then you could have a play with that. So if you had some height that you could place under the feet as your starting and ending point, then that might be helpful. If the lower back feels fine, you don't need to get any of that in place. Okay, so still in your position of knees bent, soles of the feet on the mat, arms alongside the body. Exhale, draw navel in towards spine. On your next inhale, pick the feet up, bringing the knees up until they're above the hips. And then as you exhale, draw the feet back down to the mat. Keep navel towards spine. Inhale, pick the feet up, knees above hips. Exhale, feet back down to the mat. Continue at your own pace for another 3 to 5 rounds, whatever feels right for you. If at any point it feels too much and you want to take a resting breath or two, you could hug knees into the chest and then continue for another couple of rounds. But 3 to 5 rounds, take your time. And the slower you go with this, the more you're engaging around the abdominal and lower back area. So if it feels like you're not getting much from this, if it doesn't feel like you're getting much engagement, try going slower. No rush to complete. Just know that once you have completed your rounds, then you're going to hug knees into the chest. So once you're hugging knees into the chest, you can either have hands on the knees or on the back of the thighs, whichever feels most comfortable. Let go of any action of navel towards spine. Letting go of effort in the body. Let the breath be in its natural rhythm. If it feels comfortable too, you could explore lengthening each inhale and exhale a little here. Perhaps making the exhale a little longer than the inhale. So on each exhale, there's a feeling of the front body, the belly in particular, softening and releasing into the back body, the lower back in particular, softening and releasing into the mat, into the ground. Okay, draw navel towards spine one more time. Release the hands, and on your next exhale, draw soles of the feet back down to the mat. Make your way to all fours in whatever way feels right for you. So you might roll to one side and pause there for a breath or two, then push yourself up, but come up in whatever way feels right for you and come to all fours. Hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips, fingers spread wide. And in your own time, ease into some cat-cow movements. So just taking some cat-cow movements at your own pace, matching the movements of the breath to mobilize the spine. Each inhale, you're drawing shoulders back, creating space for the chest to draw forward, allowing the tailbone to tip up. Each exhale, pushing the mat away from you with your hands, drawing the middle of the spine up towards the ceiling, letting the head release down, letting the tailbone lengthen. Keep going at your own pace. As you exhale into your cat pose, see if you can have a feeling of and explore the feeling of the navel drawing towards spine to help with the drawing of the spine up towards the ceiling. As you exhale, can you have an awareness of the connection between the hands and the mat and between the tops of the feet and the mat? So a reminder that you're drawing stability, strength from the ground. Great. Come back to center, back to your all fours. So a focus first of all on the hands pressing into the mat. Again, that reminder that in pressing the hands into the mat, we're connecting, we're increasing our connection with the ground, and the sense as we press the hands into the mat of drawing energy from the ground, so a feeling of kind of rebound energy coming up the hands, then up the arms, strengthening us in this pose. So maintain that action and now draw, on your next exhale, draw navel in towards spine. So same action as we took when we were lying on our backs. Maintain the action once you draw navel in towards spine. Again, notice, you're going for like a really strong action, so and it feels too much. If so, let it go a little, or maybe you could go a little more with it. But wherever you're at with it, notice how this feels compared to when you were lying on your back. So bring an awareness to how this feels in terms of tailbone lengthening. So as you draw navel towards spine, does it feel like there's some lengthening of the tailbone? So it's like you're lengthening the bottom part of the spine. You're still keeping a flat back. Do you notice or feel any movement changing the position of the pelvis from taking this action? And overall, is there a feeling of greater containment around that area? Great. Okay, on your next exhale, push the hands into the mat and draw bum back to heels, forehead to the mat, and come into child's pose. If it feels okay, take the arms back behind you so that the shoulders can release here too. If child's pose like this really doesn't feel releasing or doesn't feel comfortable for you, you could come onto your back and hug knees into the chest. Bring your attention to your breath, breathing into the space in the back body if you're in child's pose, or into the front body if you're hugging knees into chest. On the exhale, a feeling of the hips and shoulders softening and releasing down. The feeling of the belly soft here. So when we work with this area around the navel and the lower back, in yogic terms, we're working with the third chakra, which, amongst other things, is associated with us finding our inner strength, our power, the strength that we might not know that we even have until we need to dig deep and find it. So that can be a very empowering experience to know that there is this strength that we can draw on. And balanced with that, it's an empowering experience. It can also and can be quite energizing, but balanced with that is the capacity to recognize when taking support, asking for help, allowing others to help or support you is the strong thing to do. So here, as you take a resting pose, having an awareness of your connection with the ground, a reminder to yourself that the ground is always there to hold you, that it's there for you to draw strength and stability from it, that you can let go of efforts here. Bring your hands alongside your head, palms facing down. Use an inhale to draw yourself up to sitting on your heels. We're only here for a moment just to ease out the wrists, so you can either sit on your heels or kneel up, whatever feels comfortable, and just take some wrist rotations or anything else that feels good for easing out the wrist. So you could ease the fingers back and forwards, so kind of open and flex the wrists if that feels good. We're doing a bit more work with all fours, so just easing out the wrist is probably a good idea. And if at any point as we continue to work with all fours, you want to come back to easing out the wrists, then feel free to do that. Don't wait for me to prompt you. Equally, if you're aware as we're working that working with this navel third chakra area, you need a break from that, come to child's pose or hugging knees into the chest. Okay, so come back to your all fours now. So an awareness of the connection between the hands and the mat, and also the tops of the feet and the mat. So try and have the toes untucked if that feels okay. So the release and press of the tops of the feet into the mat might not feel quite as emphatic as the hands, but still have an awareness there. So an awareness of the connection with the ground, of the stability that you're drawing from the ground here. And now on your next exhale, draw navel in towards spine. So notice as you do that, any movement, response from the pelvis, any feeling of the tailbone lengthening. And it might be really subtle. It might feel more subtle than when you're on your back, or more obvious. Just notice. Great. Maintain that, and on your next exhale, extend your right leg back. So it's as if you're pushing the sole of the right foot against a wall behind you. You can either keep the tip of the right toe on the mat, or if it feels okay, have the leg up at hip height. Keep pressing the mat away from you with your hands and maintain navel towards spine. So notice you might have, both of those actions might have just dropped off a little as you concentrated on drawing the leg back. So find them again now. If you've got the leg up at hip height, see if the hip, you can have a feeling of the hip drawing down and in towards the midline of the body more. Great. Last few breaths here. Active through the back leg. Imagine you're pushing the foot against, the right foot against the wall behind you so that you're strong and active through the back leg. Brilliant. On your next exhale, bring the knee back down. And then you can take a few cat-cow movements, or if coming into child's pose feels good at this point, or you want to ease out the wrists, feel free to do any or a combination of those things. So one of the things that we can develop in our yoga practice is the ability to shift between states of effort and ease. And practicing, both of those things are equally important. Okay, so come back to your all fours. Find the same actions as before, so don't be tempted to kind of rush ahead. Take the time to find that active press of the hands into the mat and awareness of the feet pressing into the mat, and then draw navel towards spine. So there's a feeling of containment and stability around the pelvis, the abdominal area, the lower back. And when you're ready, use an exhale to extend the left leg back. So imagine you're pressing the sole of the left foot against the wall behind you. If it feels best to keep the tip of the toe on the mat, do that. If you can have the leg up at hip height, then great. If you've got the leg raised, see if the left hip can have a feeling of drawing down and in towards the midline of the body. So as you take the leg back, chances are the hip will have kind of opened out to the side a little. So you're trying to correct that. So you're staying contained around the hips as well. So the whole pelvic region stays contained. Last few breaths. So check that navel is still drawing towards spine. You're still pressing the mat away from you with your hands. Great. On your next exhale, bring the knee back down to the mat. Again, if you want to ease out the wrists at all, if you haven't done that recently, feel free to. We're going to do a little bit more work from all fours. Okay. And then if you've come out of your all fours position, come back to it now. We're going to take the same action as we took before, but we'll be moving with the breath now. So again, make sure you take the time to find that action of pressing mat away from you with the hands, tops of the feet pressing into the mat, then draw navel towards spine. So before you start the movement, see if you can really maintain your awareness when you take these movements around navel towards spine, rather than focusing on the legs. So the legs are doing what they're doing, you know what that feels like, but try and keep the focus on navel towards spine and hands pressing into the mat. So when you're ready, start by exhaling, extending the right leg back. Great. And then inhale, bring the right knee back to the mat. Exhale the left leg back. Inhale, bring the knee back to the mat. Continue at your own pace. Take 3 to 5 rounds at your own pace. Again, the slower you go with this, the more scope there is to really engage around this whole third chakra area. So if you're not feeling like you're getting much from it, try going slower. Keep pressing the hands of the mat away from you with the hands, so you're drawing that stability from the ground, as well as drawing on your own inner strength and power by drawing navel in towards spine, finding that containment around the pelvic area. Being really active through the back foot so that the back leg is active too. So that's part of your strength and support there. Keep the hip of the raised leg drawing in towards the midline of the body. No rush to complete, but when you've taken your 3 to 5 rounds, then draw back into child's pose. Once you're in child's pose, letting go of effort. So letting go of effort in the body, just noticing what comes up in the mind as well. Maybe the mind is, and the breath is still hyper aroused here. So just notice that, see if you can let go of effort in the body, the mind and the breath. If it feels comfortable to, lengthen the exhale. Cultivating a feeling of softening and letting go on each exhale. As you do so, a feeling of the body releasing into the ground a little more, a reminder that the ground is always there to hold you. Bring palms of the hands alongside the head. Use an inhale to draw yourself back up. And we're going to make our way up to standing. So you're very welcome to come straight up to standing and come into mountain pose at the top of the mat. If you want to come up via a downward dog and forward fold, feel free to do that now. So I won't talk you through it, but if it's part of your practice and you want to take downward dog and then walk hands to feet or feet to hands, come to forward fold, feel free to do that and then make your way up to standing. So take your time, just know that we will then meet at the top of our mats in mountain pose. So in your mountain pose, feet are pressing, releasing into the ground. That's your awareness of connection with the ground here. Tailbone is lengthening down, navel towards spine, shoulders drawing back and down. So maintain the actions now of feet pressing into the mat and shoulders drawing back and down, but let go of that action of tailbone lengthening and navel drawing towards spine. So you're allowing this third chakra area of the body to just be in its natural neutral position. So what that might, it will be different experiences for everyone, but you might notice a bit more of that natural curve in the lower back, for example. So just notice how this feels around the pelvis, around the lower back. And normally, when we're coming into mountain pose, one of the most common cues that I give, so that you'll be kind of well versed in, is to lengthen the tailbone. So this time, instead of the kind of instruction to the body being lengthening the tailbone, on your next exhale now, draw navel in towards spine. So same action as we've been taking from all fours and from lying on our backs, draw navel in towards spine. And just notice your experience of that here compared to when we were lying on our backs, compared to when we were in all fours. Notice as you've drawn navel in towards spine, any response from the tailbone. So does it feel like the tailbone's lengthened a little? Perhaps not, or perhaps more subtly than when you actively lengthen it in mountain pose. And notice also, has the pelvis shifted? Does it feel like the pelvis is tilted? Overall, does it feel like there is a greater sense of containment around the pelvic area? So let it go now for a moment. So Stop drawing navel towards spine, so you're back in that neutral position. And then repeat the action a few times. So just like we did in the other position. So on an exhale, draw navel towards spine. Notice the relationship between that and any movement in the pelvis, any movement of the tailbone lengthening, any feeling generally of containment. And then use each inhale to release that. So just take a few rounds of navel towards spine and release, navel towards spine and release. Right, and then next time you draw navel towards spine, maintain that action. And again, just notice, are you, because this is such a kind of powerful area to work with, where we're really drawing on strength, and as far as muscular work goes, you know, we can be working with some quite sort of deep muscles here. Then it can be quite easy to end up in a situation where we're really kind of clenching everything. So if you notice that it feels like everything's clenching to the point where, you know, it feels like there's real tension throughout the body, you know, maybe that's causing tension elsewhere in the face or the hands or whatever, then maybe just let it go a little. You don't need to necessarily be drawing navel as fully towards spine as you can take it. So you could explore just the subtleties of almost different settings there. Maybe it feels really good to draw it in as much as you can. Maybe that feels great, but just notice. Okay, so maintaining your mountain pose in this way now, either closing your eyes or softening your gaze. Bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. If you set an intention at the start of your practice, take a moment to recall that now. Opening your eyes, lifting your gaze if you want to now. On your next inhale, sweep the arms up or bring hands to the hips. Try and keep as much awareness around that navel area as you can as we flow through now. So on your next exhale, draw the chest forwards and down, come into your forward fold. So navel drawing towards spine to help the hips draw up towards the ceiling here. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift. Shoulders drawing back, chest drawing forward. Exhale back down to your forward fold. So just pausing here in your forward fold for a moment. Find that awareness of navel drawing towards spine to help the hips draw up towards the ceiling more, to create more space for the upper body to release down. Also an awareness of the feet pressing into the ground, so still drawing stability, strength from the ground as well. Bend your knees as much as you need to, or if you need to bring the palms of the hands to the mat in front of, slightly wider than the feet. Maintain that action of navel towards spine. See if you can bring a bit more weight forwards into the hands, and see if you can bring that action of pressing the mat away from you with your hands, just as we were doing when we were in all fours. So that combination of hands pressing into the mat and navel drawing towards spine may be helping you to find a little more lift to the hips. Okay, and then next time you exhale, draw the right foot and the left foot back. Keep shoulders above wrists. We're coming into a plank pose. Once you've got the feet back, you can keep the knees raised or bring the knees down. Doesn't matter which. Watch out for the ego mind there. Really doesn't matter which. The point is to be able to effectively work with this third chakra area. Great. So here, navel towards spine. So as you draw navel towards spine, can you notice the feeling of the tailbone lengthening? Can you notice that tilt of the pelvis? Keep pressing the hands into the mat, drawing stability from the ground as well. Last few breaths here. Great. On your next exhale, push the mat away from you with your hands and draw bum back to the heels. forehead to the mat to come into an extended child's pose. So as you do that, as you come back to your extended child's pose, then letting go of that feeling of engagement around the navel. Try and keep a sense of engagement between the hands and the mat. Doesn't have to be really emphatic, but a feeling of the hands still pressing into the mat at least a little here. Few more breaths here. Maybe lengthen the exhale. So there's a feeling of cultivating, softening and release in the body, particularly around the belly. In a moment, we're going to draw forwards into a low plank position. So as we do that in a minute, try and keep the engagement between the hands and the mat. So to do that, you can imagine that the hands are trying to drag back towards your knees, but you're not letting them move. So you've got some traction there. And as we draw forwards in a minute, see if you can notice the point at which you can start to engage that navel area again. So the point at which you can draw navel towards spine to support you. So the slower you can go with this, the more effective you might be in noticing that point. Okay. So on your next inhale, start to draw forward. So hands are engaged with the mat. As you lift the bum up away from the heels, can you start to draw navel towards spine? As you draw further forward, a bit more of a press of the hands into the mat as the weight comes forward. Navel drawing towards spine. As you draw further forward, perhaps there's a bit more awareness of tailbone lengthening. And stay here in your low plank for a few breaths. Great. Super. On your next exhale, draw back to your extended child's pose. Again, take it slowly if you can, so you notice the point at which you let go of that engagement in the navel. You're allowing the ground to hold you more, so just stay there for a few breaths. So although there is some engagement with the hands, between the hands and the mat, just noticing how that has really softened compared to when you're forward. So you're more passively allowing the ground to hold you. And then we'll take a few of the repetitions of that movement with the breath. Again, the slower you can go, the more you're noticing, and also the more scope there is to really engage some of these abdominal and lower back muscles. Okay, so on your next inhale, draw forwards to your low plank. Take your time, just know that then on the exhale, you're drawing back to extended child's pose, and then complete that another 3 times if that feels okay. Another 1, 2, or 3 times, whatever feels okay for you. See if you can really keep the focus on that navel towards spine action, and therefore the focus is so keep going with the action of navel towards spine, and keep the focus on the pelvis, tailbone, and navel area. And also an awareness of the connection to the ground through the hands. Great. Brilliant. Really good work. Once you've taken those repetitions, then stay back in child's pose. So no rush, but just stay back in child's pose once you're done. Right. You can either keep the arms forward, but just allow them to rest more fully on the ground now. So maybe forearms rest a bit more on the ground, so you're more passive. Or if it feels okay to bring the arms back behind you into a full child's pose, feel free to do that. Last few breaths in your child's pose. Maybe lengthen your exhale if you haven't already. Cultivating that feeling of softening, of letting go, of allowing the ground to hold you here. Okay, bring your hands alongside your head. Use an inhale to draw yourself up. You could just sit on your heels for a moment, just to watch for a minute. So whilst we're down here and working with plank, I just wanted to offer the opportunity for us to practice lowering down to the mat. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that. So first way is to be on your forearm. So that's what we're going to practice now. So come to your all fours to start with, and then come down onto your forearms. So got forearms on the mat with forearms running more or less parallel to the long edges of the mat. And then you might need to shuffle the arms forwards a little. What you want to do then, so at the moment you've got hips above knees and elbows further forward than the shoulders, palms of the hands down into the mat. Draw navel towards spine, and as you next exhale, draw forwards until shoulders are above wrists. And you want to find a position where you feel like you're in that you've got that plank action going on, like when we were working with low plank. So if it feels like you haven't quite got that, then you could take the hands a little further forward until you can really feel like there's that action of the tailbone lengthening. And then from here, on your next exhale, keep navel towards spine and draw the chest forward and down. So naturally, as you draw the chest forward, it's going to come down. Keep going until belly and chest come down to the mat. And then from here, you can come into either cobra or sphinx pose. So you're quite well set up for sphinx pose here. So pressing the hands into the mat, almost as if they're trying to drag back towards the elbows. Use that to draw the shoulders back so the chest can draw forward. Or if you wanted to, you could slide the hands further back so hands are underneath the shoulders so you can come up into your cobra. Great. If you've taken sphinx, slide the hands back now so they're more underneath the shoulders, and then press the mat away from you with your hands. Use an inhale to come back to your all fours. Great. So let's just take this one more time. So it may well be that when you lower down to the mat, you lower down in a different way to this, but this is a nice one to practice in terms of engaging this navel area and to know it as a good variation for lowering down to the mat. So when you're ready from your all fours, come back onto your forearms, find that forearm plank position. So that's probably the bit that's kind of the most sort of faffing about if it's not something you usually take. And then when you're there, make sure navel is drawing towards spine, and then see if you can really maintain that action of navel towards spine as you lower the chest, as you draw the chest forwards and down until both belly and chest are on the mat. And then you can come to your cobra or your sphinx. Great. And then push yourself back up to all fours. Great. So a handy one to know, either to use all the time to lower down to the mat, or if at any point you know that that's going to feel better or safer for your body. The other way of lowering down to the mat, we'll just very briefly visit now. And if it doesn't feel right for you, then you can stick with the variation that we just explored and practice that another 1 or 2 times before you come back into child's pose. But if you want to try the other variation, then you're starting in your low plank. So make your way into your low plank pose. So shoulders are above wrists, hands are pressing the mat away, navel towards spine, so there's a feeling of the tailbone lengthening. Great. And then from there, on an exhale, press into the hands, probably particularly the heels of the hands are going to take the most of it, but as much into the hands as you can. Bend the elbows, but keep the elbows tucked into the body, and start to lower the chest down in between the hands. As you do that, lift the bum. So that's the sort of one of the key things, is to lift the bum as you lower the chest down. Lowering. So navel is no longer towards spine now. So chest comes to the mat. So you've got knees and chest on the mat, and then you can press the heels of the hands into the mat to help support you as you slide forward onto your belly, draw shoulders back, chest forwards to come to your cobra. And then from there, you can push yourself back up to all fours. So feel free, if you want to, if you've still got it in you, to practice one more time of lowering down. Whichever way, feel free to do that, and then come back into child's pose. Yeah, that's great, Angela, from what I can see. Yeah, lovely, Jill. So keep the navel towards spine as you lower down. Lovely. Yeah, great. The slower you go, the more you're working with that. Yeah, that's great, Steve. So you're keeping elbows. If you're doing the lowering down with hands on the mat, then elbows are staying tucked into the body. Yeah, great. Great, Steve. Lift the bum as you lower the chest. Great. So if you're not already, then draw back into a child's pose now. Again, if child's pose doesn't feel releasing, you could be on your back, hugging knees into the chest. Take some resting breaths. Maybe lengthening the exhale if that feels okay. Letting go of effort. Using each exhale to cultivate a feeling of softening and release in the body. Feeling of the body releasing into the ground, and awareness of the ground holding you. Okay, so make your way back to all fours. Take your hands further forwards now, so hips are still above knees, but hands are further forwards than the shoulders. Actively press the hands into the mat. So again, the awareness of the connection between the hands and the mat. So as you press the hands into the mat, it's almost like there's a rebound energy coming from that action up the arms, lengthening the arms, finding more strength and stability. Tuck the toes under, and now draw navel in towards spine. So again, notice how that feels here compared to the other positions from which we've taken that action. Hands are pressing into the mat, navel towards spine. As you next inhale, lift the knees up off the mat just an inch or so, and just pause there for a moment and find that balance between the press of the hands into the mat and navel drawing towards spine, both supporting you here. Great. And on your next inhale, draw the hips up and back to come into your downward dog. So notice at this point, we're quite used to, when we're working in downward dog, bringing awareness to the hands pressing into the mat, but notice, bring your awareness to that navel area. So what can you access there in terms of a feeling of navel drawing towards spine? Again, it might feel quite different. It might feel more subtle. It might feel like you can't really. If you can feel navel drawing towards spine, does that feel like that allows you to draw the hips up and back just a little more, maybe? Great. And then either walk hands towards feet or feet towards hands to come into your forward fold. Take a few breaths in your forward fold. So finding that balance between effort and ease. So on each inhale, focusing on the effort, if you like, of navel drawing towards spine to help the hips draw further up towards the ceiling. On each exhale, focusing on finding ease and softening in the upper body, letting the shoulders, the neck, the head soften and release. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale, draw the chest forwards and all the way up. Either sweep the arms up or have hands on the hips. Exhale, bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Release the arms alongside the body. Be in your full mountain pose. Either close the eyes or soften the gaze. Observe the body, observe the breath, observe the mind. Now make your way down onto the mat. So we're coming towards Shavasana, so you might want to grab any extra layers, or if you're using blankets or eye covering for Shavasana, have those to hand so you don't need to get up off the mat again. So once you are on the mat, so no rush if you're still gathering things, but just know that you're coming onto the mat with knees bent, soles of the feet on the mat. Have the feet and the knees alongside each other. And see if you can use your exhale to allow the shoulders to soften and release down into the mat a little more. Once you're there, then use an exhale to draw the knees out to the side so you come to rest on the outer edge of each foot and the soles of the feet press gently together. So you're coming into your Baddha Konasana. If it doesn't feel comfortable for the lower back to be in that position, then one option, if you have available something like a rolled up blanket, you really don't need a bolster, it doesn't need to be as high as this, so a rolled up blanket would be great. Then what you could do is have the legs out long and have your support underneath the knees, at the backs of the knees. So that just allows the knees to fall out to the sides a little bit, you're still completely supported, just so you bring a bit of openness to the hips after quite a lot of closed hip work. Bring your attention to your breath. And as you observe the breath, also bring your attention to your belly. You might place one or both hands on the belly if that feels helpful. Have your awareness at your belly. So on each inhale, there's an awareness of any natural feeling of the belly rising or expanding. You're not making anything extra happen, you're just noticing what happens naturally. On each exhale, noticing any sense of the belly softening and releasing back down towards the spine. So if it feels comfortable to lengthen the inhale and the exhale a little here as you explore that, feel free to, but keep the breath feeling easeful. So you're practicing a softening and a letting go of effort here, noticing just the any natural feelings of expansion or rise in the belly on the inhale, any natural feelings of the belly softening and releasing back in on the exhale. Letting that go now. And if you're in Baddha Konasana, use an inhale to draw the knees back together. Now making your way into your Shavasana. Again, a suggestion also for your Shavasana would be to have that support underneath the backs of the knees with the legs out long. But entirely up to you. Most importantly, be in a position where you feel supported by the ground, where you can practice now letting go of effort, allowing the ground to hold you. Letting go of any sense of controlling the breath. Letting go of any feeling of needing to hold or expend effort in the body. Allow the ground to hold your body. Allow the breath to be in its natural rhythm. Just observing the breath now, knowing that all you need to do right now is just be with the breath. And that this space is held for you while you do that. Starting to bring some deeper breaths into your body. Slowly bringing some movement back to your body. Maybe wiggling fingers and toes, perhaps rotating wrists and ankles. Taking any movements now, any stretches, sighs, yawns. Anything that feels good as you bring your full awareness back to your body. Taking your time to make your way back up to a comfortable seated position. Having your eyes closed, your gaze soft as you do that. If you set an intention at the start of your practice, take a moment to recall that now. Bringing palms of the hands together in front of the heart. And taking a moment to be grateful to yourself for making the time for this practice today. And a moment for us to be grateful that we have this practice of yoga available to us, and that we have this means of connection available so we can gather and practice together in this way. If you want to, you could take a moment to think of anything else that you're grateful for right now. Bowing your head towards your fingertips. Namaste. Releasing your hands, raising your head whenever you're ready. Thank you guys, lovely to practice with you.